So all the same guys who prosecuted the fuck out of this guy, did all this shit to him, threw him in jail for 11 years. He ended up doing 7.5 next to Kim Kardashian. But like, that was the longest sentence in U.S. history at the time for insider trading. All these same people then monetized the fuck out of that and then had the gall to set up a commission to say, oh, you know what? That shouldn't even be a law 9 years later. That is certifiably insane.
You're looking at somebody who thinks that you're going to kill them, and it's like, I just want to get off of this mountain. And it's also like the whole.
Did you want to kill him?
No.
That never, because it would have been defense. Like in that moment, you're thinking, this guy has a knife. I don't. If I got a free shot to like pound his head right into the sand and he dies, hey, I live.
No.
You never thought that.
The thing that snapped me out of it was seeing his eyes and seeing his face covered in my blood. Like, that was horrifying.
How long did it take for you to realize it was your blood and not his?
Well, because I was on top of him, so I saw it leaking out of my head. And
hello, Tom Lecky here with the latest edition of the New Theory podcast. We've got a very special guest today, but before we jump in, this guy, a lot of people that I have on the show, they talk about their past and their current, past accomplishments and that kind of stuff. But what's special about you is you're doing great now, and you're going to do bigger things in the future. But before I get to that, this guy has balls, okay? A guy had a good job, educated the whole nine, says, I want to do podcasting. The guy literally packs everything up, goes back home, lives with his parents, sets up a studio in the house, gets some of the biggest names in the entire podcasting industry, blows up, and then now has a studio in Hoboken, killing it and getting even bigger names. Julian, Dorey, welcome to New Theory Podcast. How you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. That was a hell of an intro, man.
But here's what's great about it. I had Julian on before. I'll put a thing up, kind of baseline interview, but we're going to go in depth today. I had to hear about it from Matt Cox. I didn't hear about it from you. You're kind of shy about it. So I want to first hear how that conversation goes with your parents, your friends, maybe a significant other. We're like, hey, I'm going to pack it up and go back home, and I'm going to podcast.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how it sounds. It's like, holy shit, what am I going to do now? I mean, I've gone through the story on some other podcasts, but, just for the quick background, I was working on Wall Street, and I was in the private bank at Merrill. And so the way that business kind of worked is you grind like a dog for 4 or 5 years out of college. Yeah. Maybe you make it. If you do, you get the offer. I worked for an amazing guy, Larry Katina, my homie to this day, great dude, and loved working with him. I just didn't like banking. Like it wasn't, picture me in a suit. Yeah. And it's just not really happening. So I got to the point where he offered that deal in late summer 2019. I realized I can't take this because, look, could I have taken it and collected a big check for the first time in my life for a couple of years and then pieced? Yes, but I'm never going to do that. Loyalty is my main thing, and that would have been just disloyal ass behavior to everything he had done for me. So I said no to that. I was working on changing industries, and then fast forward to shortly before the pandemic, February 2020, I was finally making some headway. I got my ass kicked on the job trail, and then the whole world blew up and everything stopped. And so on the side, I'd had this bullshit little, Saturday afternoon hobby, like, oh, well, if we'd ever did a podcast, here's how we would do it. Because people were always bothering me like, dude, why don't you have a podcast? Why don't you have a podcast? And so I had as I would say, it was pretty dumb. I spent any money I had, which was very, very little, because again, I didn't collect that contract.
Correct.
To buy the best equipment I could. And so pandemic hits, my dad calls me up. Number one, I was going to be leaving my job. It was already set before the pandemic hit. So first my boss calls and says, hey, why don't you stay until we go back to the office? Exactly. You're working remote now. Yeah. We got everything under control. You can collect a little money from the company. I'm like, all right, that sounds pretty good. I can keep paying my bills. And then my dad called me up, and he was like, yo, this is when they're saying 2 weeks to stop the curve. He's like, do not re-sign your lease. I'm like, I might now. I don't know. He's like, no. This is going to last a year. And I'm like, you're fucking crazy. And he was on that one. He knew that. So I didn't re-sign it. I came home to South Jersey by Philly in April 2020. During March, I had started really building at night what, not even, it wasn't a podcast yet. It was like whatever this was going to be.
Yeah.
And then I got home, I put the equipment on the couch, and my dad was like, the fuck is that? And I said, I was asking myself the same thing, man. And so there was a back room there. He's like, well, if not now, when? And I went back there. It wasn't like an ideal type of shape of a room.
Yeah.
It was a really nice room.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like an ideal shape for a podcast. But I'm like, fuck it. We're going to make it work. And I got to say, like, I think for my first studio, being in my parents' house, like, I think it worked beautifully. I was really grateful for that. But, yeah, so that was the conversation. It was like, if not now, when? And then there was no... I didn't even know what it was going to be for a while. I just went monk mode.
Yeah.
I mean, I really, since April 2020, I'd say March, but let's say April to be conservative. Since April 2020, this is all I've done. Eat, sleep, shit, and breathe. Wow. This podcast. And so, I'm honored to hear you talk about where it's at and everything. And it's cool in some ways to see that, but I don't really have time to think about that because as it's gone up, the budget has gone up, and I'm just breaking even. Yeah. So, I want to get to a point where it's really a thought in my head now where I can be free again. I want to, and it'll make the show better too, because I still do. I have Alessi Alamon working with me who does an incredible job. Brought him on April of this year. He blocks and tackles everything with me, like amazing. But we need so much help, man. Like, we need so many more people to do all the things you have to do now to cut through the noise. Yep. And I got to be able to pay them. And in the meantime, your boy is the one sitting here doing everything for the episodes that come out the day before, and doing all the thumbnails and handling all the blocking and tackling and the scheduling of guests and figuring out who's going to come on and when and what the final product looks like. I got my agent helping with brand deals now, but then I'm doing the brand deals, so it's a never ending cycle, but we're getting there.
So people that watch the show, we obviously talk about the business end of things. We're going to unpack that in a little bit, but just like when anybody makes more money, there's lifestyle inflation, right? So I remember, when you're making $100,000 a year, let's say, and then all of a sudden you're making $3 million, you start spending a lot more. So it's kind of like, well, now you're kind of netting the same because you have the lifestyle inflation. Same happens for business, that, right? Like if the Julian of January 24 went to the Julian of April 20 and didn't talk about the bottom line, just said top line, you'd be making X, you'd probably shit, right? Top line.
I will say this.
Yeah.
For the views and spread that I've had, if you told me the top line, I'd say, well, don't do this. Because, when I was going viral, like kind of the first one for podcasts in the shorts feed and setting that up, and now so many creators are doing an amazing job with that. It's great to see everyone over there. But, I think I made... I couldn't even tell you the amount of money, but I'll put it this way. The first month I went viral on YouTube, I did almost 50 million views.
Wow. Holy.
And it was $2,650.
Oh, because of the shorts.
Yeah, at the time. That was December 2021. So, yeah, if you would have told me the lack of monetization, I would have been like, oh, my God. But it's nice to go into some things eyes wide shut, because... You look at a lot of the greatest things to ever happen. Not that that's what we're doing here, but I'm saying, like, you look throughout history and things, people go in, and that unknown of what kind of obstacles they're going to encounter or how hard something actually is serves to their benefit, because then they're not, especially an overthinker like me, you're not thinking about it before you get to it. I find that when I struggle the most now, it's because I actually can see some things coming, and I'm like, oh my God, and I start thinking about it. So it was very, very good. Like those 6 months, 5 months, I launched the podcast publicly September 15th, 2020. Okay. For 5 months from, beginning of April till then, I built in silence. Like no one knew about it, right? And I was just, I could pull up the documents and stuff I was looking at. It's funny now because it's like, my God, you didn't know anything. But I'm just researching every little thing I could get my hands on to figure out, like, how do I do this and make it work where all I have to do is turn on the cameras and be me. And the more research I did, the more I figured out that that's what people love. And I'm like, thank God, because if I had to do like a 1 hour show where I played a character, no, it wouldn't.
It's not gonna happen.
It just wouldn't work. You know what I mean? So that period, I think, just being completely away from the world in the height of the pandemic in monk mode, just getting my mind ready was critical. And even despite doing all that, I mean, within a week of launching publicly, there's all kinds of things I never thought of. I'm like, oh, well, I guess we're just going to be trial by fire, learn as we go. And that's all you can do.
Well, I've been vocal about the shorts, and so I always look at, I try to read the earning reports for Google. I try to see what's going on, how they manage YouTube, see what's going on there. So they let their CEO go. I think Susan Wojcicki.
Yeah.
And she essentially was an OG. TikTok blindsided
Yes.
YouTube. YouTube aged up, so a lot of older people on it. So got their clock clean in terms of not adapting to short-term content. So typical to social media forum, they were giving away views. Like I'm talking, I would be at the dinner with my wife. Yeah, I'm using my channel a little bit, sort of a little behind the scenes, somewhat social for me. A little different lane than what you're doing, something much smaller channel. But I like you do a toast, 10,000 views. Date night, 15,000. I'm talking like
At the very, you're talking like June 2021.
Couldn't even like post and not get 50,000 views.
You remember what happened right then, right? That was when TikTok's user average amount of time spent per day per user passed YouTube.
That's correct. And I believe they freaked out. So they said, hey, we need to go to short-term content. And I did an experiment, actually. I put like a Sammy the Bull video up that I interviewed him. And I put like subscribe below. And they put another one up. I didn't say subscribe below. And I got like 3,000 subs, which is a lot for me, just from that one.
Oh, yeah.
And the other one got like 300. So I was under no illusion it was going to make me any money because I'm very like disgruntled when it comes to YouTube. You probably are too. But I knew it was a sub magnet. So I used it as a sub magnet, and it got the subs that I need, got what I needed from it. But then I was looking, because I also buy ads on behalf of clients, right? And to like do a short ad, you have to be 16 by 9 or 9 by 16. It's got to be 15 or 30 seconds, and then call to action. So it's hard for you to buy space and shorts. So that's where the money is, the ad. So when I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of ad space bought, I knew it was just going to be a way for them to keep you on the system. And it actually blew up in their face, and I want your opinion. There was a leak, I think third quarter of last year, where an internal person from Google leaked to the media that they feel they messed up with shorts because it took away from the long form and cost them in the end. What do you think about that, Julian?
Yeah, it's a great point. I have so many thoughts on shorts because it's how I came up, and I evolutioned. I don't think that's a word, but I like
sounds good.
Evolutionized myself away from it personally.
Yeah,
I was doing all the edits until April of this year, and then I realized the algorithm was moving away from the way the shorts algorithm had worked when I was coming up and like blowing up with it. Was they treated it the same as videos. They didn't care how often you posted. If it was great, and they were sending it.
Correct.
Then they started to say, we want to delta more quantity, right? So I said, well, I'm OCD as fuck. I'm not going to spend less than 20, 25 hours on a short.
Yeah.
That's not the model anymore. We've made this one work. So let me find amazing editors who will do like a, where I do 1, they do 6 or 7. It's a watered down version. It's not what I would be able to do with my OCD, but like it's going to be great. And they've done a really good job with that. So we started moving to that. But the thing about YouTube is to get back directly to your question. Yeah. It feels like YouTube is always, they're so far ahead that everyone else actually thinks they're winning. And so for the first time, when you saw TikTok for a minute overtake them on average time spent per day, I'll bet there was a hands-on deck meeting
100%.
at YouTube like, okay, we've never seen this before. But they're fucking Google.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That means they have the war chest of fucking, China. Yep. Like they have a war chest of like a major country.
Yep.
And so they say to themselves, what's TikTok doing? TikTok is pushing a lot of inane content that's more driven for the 14 to 18-year-olds. YouTube then looks at their user data and they say, okay, We got a lot of 14, 18-year-olds too. We have less now because of TikTok. But like, where's our ballpark? Like, the prime YouTube is like males 25 to 45.
I agree.
Okay. So they're like, okay, so before they're 25, they're 21, 22, 23. We want that one. What kinds of content are those males not getting on TikTok? And so on TikTok, where you kind of have all the inane stuff all the time, they're like, okay, well, why don't we delta more like podcasts and things like that, which they did.
They finally did
on
that,
YouTube. So they made kind of like, there's a lot of the same type of content on both feeds, but where you may see more of certain types, you're going to see it on different platforms. And so once they got people through that, then the other content they started layering in, right? And so people then are like, oh, I can just see what I would see on TikTok on YouTube. And oh, by the way, and this was the biggest hack, you can stay right on the app to get to the better content. Yeah. So when you talk about it was cannibalizing their views until, and I mean, they did move to a monetized structure now with shorts, but they make less on those ads because it's a flick feed rather than click on the video, right? So that's an issue.
And you share it as a creator.
Yes, yeah, correct. So, you know, when you talk about that, YouTube wanted to basically like throw money at the problem into the fire that they could burn to outlast TikTok. And once they, because now TikTok's way below them on that chart. And once they did that, now they can start to pull it back because they have their captive viewers again. So, you know, how they do that is going to continue to be interesting. A huge problem they ran into that's probably a part of these internal leaks was, so in 2022, they turned off the bridge, and they talked about this publicly. Yeah. And the bridge was, if you sub to a channel via a short, you could also see their content in your feed. And they said no more. They said on rare occasions, unless the user shows behavior that they want to go see that content.
It's essentially two different algorithms.
Yes. And so that was a big problem for me at the beginning of that. And then I took my skills and moved them towards making the intros on the episodes, and then we fixed that problem.
Got it.
But they were punishing everyone, which pissed me off, because what was happening was there would be these kids who would blow up. They'd have like a 7-second shtick of something, right? And they'd blow up. It was a video on an iPhone. It took them 5 seconds to make. They could post one every day. They'd blow up. They'd get 6 million followers, and they'd be like, oh, fuck. Subscribers be like, oh, fuck. Now I got to make videos like a 7-minute video to make money, right? Because they weren't making much money on shorts. And so now you ask that same kid making bullshit for 7 seconds on an iPhone to make a 7-minute vlog. What was happening is users were then getting those videos into their feeds, hitting it and going, oh, what the fuck is this? Getting off on a 7-minute video within 30 seconds and unsubscribing. And so what happens? That's a bad user experience. Then the user leaves the app because they're bored and they want something else. And that's the worst thing YouTube can get. YouTube wants watch time. They want people who are staying on the app and hitting the subscribe button. So because they had so many creators like this, they made a rug pull type decision to just do it to all shorts channels that grew through shorts across the board. And so I saw my views get hit because here's the difference. And this is what I tried to get across to YouTube at the time, but I was a small creator, so no one's hearing you. I'm like, the content that is a piece of the actual long content that demonstrates that people are going from that short content to that same long content, i.e. a clip from a podcast that has a full-length video on there, you have got to not have that be a part of the bridge problem, because that's actually helping you. It's bridging people to long-form content that people are going to watch, because I could see my numbers. People would come on. They would come from a short. They'd subscribe to a video on my long-form video, because I can see when that number goes way up, and it's not just from people clicking that in the feed. And people would tell me, oh, I found it through a short. And then they would watch it for a long time. So I'm like, I should be like, not to be biased, but me, all these other podcasts that are starting to do this now, we should all be gold to you. This is what you should want, because on TikTok, good luck getting someone to leave TikTok to come over to YouTube for a long form podcast. It's not happening. So you have this advantage. Why aren't you taking it? And they didn't really take it. And I'm like, okay, again, they're fucking Google. They can wait as long as they want to do something. I can't. That's the one thing. Like, you can't wait around for them to change. You just have to go with whatever they say and now adapt to it. So August 2022, I took the time I would spend on shorts, and I now started doing that on the intro to the actual episode every week, which increase my watch time.
I noticed the
Yeah.
intros, which is good because it gives it kind of some color and character. Just kind of 2 points. The first was they thought that now you can watch a short and you can add the video or any video you want to link to. And they thought that was going to be a quick hit, right? But the problem is you're flicking through. I'm in kind of short-term, short form mode. So I don't want to click the long form. I don't want to see the long form. I'll just maybe follow you or later on, Julian, I'll go back. So that wasn't a quick hit. And then the second part is so most people watching this will probably be return viewers. So I kind of grew up in like the mob genre, right? Which, as you can imagine, is not the most dynamic genre out there. You think, right? Yeah. So and like I'm pretty good. I have a digital agency. I've been YouTubing a while. We have YouTube clients in the service space, which is totally different, but I'm pretty good at what I do, and I know what I'm doing. And I'll say I was early on in shorts a long time ago, about a year and a half ago, and nobody listened. Those that listened did well. Those that didn't, right? And then I'm like, hey guys, I kind of did a rug pull on shorts. You need to get off of shorts. The pendulum's going to go back to long form, hence renting the studio. Mm-hmm. And people are like, you're such an idiot. You know what we're talking about. You got to write on shorts. Back. So now I'm contradicting what I'm saying. But like, I think you could back this up is things move so fast digitally that although they invested like probably billions of dollars into the shorts program, they have no problem, like you said, losing money and rug pulling it for the sake of screwing somebody else.
Yeah, because that's what they have to do. Again, it's Google. Yeah. They're the algorithm of the internet, right? So that was the big thing I couldn't figure out at the beginning. I'm like, we know TikTok's algorithm is revolutionary and incredible, and it was. Yeah. But I'm like, motherfucker, you are Google. You have more in one day than any of the greatest new algorithms could ever have in their lifetime. Like, what are you doing? So they could do that. They pressed it hard, and now, I'm seeing that some users are getting annoyed by having shorts all over their feed all the time. I've seen that for a while, but I'm seeing more of it now. And it's because now you want to short the shorts a little bit more where you are because it's so saturated. Yeah. It's impossible to break through. I used to know and I still do. I'm OCD, so I have 40,000 screenshots in my phone of YouTube data. I could tell you down to the percentage point, down to the decimal of the percentage point, exactly what videos needed to go. So I would know within 5 minutes, 10, 15 minutes of putting up a video if it was going or not. And now you have no idea which one's going to go and which not because there's way too much content out there. And to go back to the bridge thing, one of the most maddening comments I would get in, as far as I think I would even still see this come in a bunch in late 2022 because they took off the bridge, I think May or June 2022. I would get comments from people on shorts that said, hey man, love your videos. Can't wait for the uploads. What do we have to do to get you to post the full episodes on here? Now, I've been posting the full episodes on YouTube since day one on September 15, 2020. Yeah. That's not the fans' fault. Yeah. Because the way that they had to figure out YouTube when they turned out the bridge, the way they made them even have to figure out that you had a long-form channel was you had to click the person's logo on the right side, and then when you got to the next page, it had a TikTok feed of clips, and it didn't say click here. You had to know to click the profile picture just to get to where they may have another channel, or a full channel, and that was crazy. So now, when fast forward to through the end of 2023, now into early 2024. You're seeing so many channels just make a million shorts that good luck. Yeah. Good luck breaking through it. I don't care how good it is. I would not, you want to talk about what we were talking about earlier with knowing what goes into something and the challenges you're going to face and then not wanting to do it because of it. Not that we had to get me away from making shorts because I have to do all the other things with the podcast. Yeah. But if you said, hey, Julian, you have a day or two here to go back to old times and make a short, I would not want to do it because I know I would sit there for 25 hours over 2 days worth of work. Yeah. I'd make a perfect short. I would make a beautiful clip of a topic that I know is going to do well. It would come out. It would do 120% average watch time on 48 seconds.
Yep.
And it would have probably a 95% chance of going nowhere.
Yeah.
That's scary.
And not make money, because that's one of the things about YouTube, which is insane. So Google owns YouTube. So in my day job, I buy ads on behalf of clients, Google PPC, pay-per-click, and Google ads. And they haven't really pushed video ads as part of the platform. You could, if you have to go to the advanced, I don't know if you know, you have to go like to the advanced screen. It's actually not part of the top 6. You got to click it. You got to click video, and then you do skippable, in stream, whatever that is, right? So they don't push that as much. They're not doing a promote thing, which we'll get to in a second. But what I don't get is, like, they're not like an old school company where if you were old school in any business logic, the creators are what are bringing the revenue in. Why not take care of them? Yeah.
Again, I think because it's Google and they have the entire world, and there'll always be someone who's willing to do it. I agree with you, but they also know there's a million ways to make money off the app. I wish I were better at that. Yeah. I'm not. That's not. We have the agents who do know what they're doing with that, and they're doing a great job and helping me out a little bit there. But, it's tough. I mean, because you have so many. I guess it depends on the type of content you do. But like for what I do, my God, do you have so many overhead expenses?
Yep.
And I built this grassroots. It's crazy to say this, but again, the world has changed and the way you do content has changed so fast. April 2020, my budget was about 1/15th of what it is now.
Wow.
Right? And it has to go up now.
Correct. And you didn't 15x your revenue, or you did proportionally?
No, I didn't 15x my revenue.
Interesting.
No.
So let's kind of switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about your content strategy, and this is what makes Julian great. And I'm going to kind of preface this a little bit. You're welcome to hit the disagree or agree button. You like just fall short of like the, what is that called? The aluminum foil hat type guy, right? You fall like just short of it. But then like you have some really like major criminals for the most part without like getting slimy. And then in the middle, you have like law enforcement or ex-law enforcement.
All over, man.
So no, but that's what makes your show special. Julian Dorey podcast, shout out.
Thank you.
Give us kind of like the content strategy when you started, right? And then give me the content strategy, where you're at now.
So there's the core of it has not changed and it won't change, but Let me put it into the eras for you. When I started, I remember thinking to myself, damn, I'm going to have to do, because I dropped 10 episodes the first day that I launched the podcast. One of them was with my cousin Sydney, who was in there. I was like, oh, fuck it. We'll do a guest podcast. And then
You got a pulse here. You qualified.
Right. Exactly. And then she did a great job, though. And then another one was I did get my friend Terrence to come through to do a sit-down podcast with me.
Yeah.
But the other 8 were solos. And I thought, oh, my God, I'm going to have to make fucking 30 solos before anyone I know is going to want to come in here.
Yeah.
To my surprise, when I launched, I had a bunch of friends who were like, again, this is like high the pandemic and everything too. Yeah. They're like, yo, bro, I'd come do that.
That's
including
cool.
like friends, because I was back down in South Jersey, friends from New York, like, yo, I'll come down.
So
we immediately moved to just guest, which is what I wanted. I mean, no hate on solo podcasts. There's a lot of great ones out there. I just don't like doing that.
Me neither.
I don't enjoy talking to myself. It's very weird.
Yeah.
So I'm like, great, I can get to what I want. And the qualification was, at the beginning, you need to be able to talk.
Correct.
That's it, right? I knew inherently, and I never said this to guests, I knew what I wanted to do was set 2 precedents. Only in person. I never did a Zoom.
Yeah.
Don't even know how to use it.
You said that, yeah.
Only in person and long form. I need to set that from day one, because it's very hard to then make people have to do something when you start there as opposed to when you start there from day one and set that expectation.
Good point.
So I said, I need to do that, and I'm going to put out an episode every week. I'm going to put everything I can into this thing. And I did. I mean, I worked all day and night.
Yeah.
And so I just needed someone who could talk. And what I wouldn't say to him is I knew early on I was going to be carrying a lot of the conversations. It's just how it is because people got to get to know you. And then when I get people where they had a story or something like that, those were easy because then I could sit back and let them do a lot more. But all that mattered was I need to figure out how to take this stuff, package it, and market it. And so I learned how to do the whole podcast inside and out for the first 5-6 months. And then February 2021, I started making the short form content, which I had studied for a while. Yeah. But I'm like, as I started to ramp up, I'm like, man, podcasts don't even make shorts, most of them, on TikTok or anywhere. And secondly, the ones who do suck. I mean, what people would do is they would take 1080 by 1350, the old Instagram size, not even full screen, dump a couple captions on it, throw it on TikTok in the 1080 by 1920 feed, competing with everything else. Yeah. And I'm like, this is the bar? This is a low bar. Yeah. And so I'm like, why don't we make movies out of this? And within 6 months, I started doing, I had ramped up by, you know, as like an audio-visual guy, music mattered a lot to me and how I made it match and how the words became a part of a song in a lot of ways. Yeah. You know, you could like rewrite these great songs in a sense because I always used non-royalty free, like I used real instrumentals of real songs. I was always hacking culture. I'm like, I don't recognize this fucking song by this jerk off on royalty free. No disrespect, you know, but I recognize The Hills by The Weeknd. Yeah, right. I recognize Hans Zimmer if you want to go in that direction. I recognize whatever you want. I mean, my playlist had every genre on it because I love all different kinds of music. Yeah. And I would just sit there and nerd out on exactly what beat to drop it on. I need to time it perfectly because I edited it all off app, and what the vibe was going to be, how different beats would completely change the meaning of a clip. It was really like amazing to grasp just what the smallest little tweaks could do to change something. And so then in early August 2021, I then figured out the B-roll part. And I said, okay, again, no royalty free. Yeah. We're going to go use real shit. I'm going to fever dream the fuck out of these things because I realized, oh my God, all these guys who come into my studio, they're taking me places, right? When they're telling stories, which is what I then realized we were going to make all our clips out of, some sort of story or narrative. I'm picturing things in my head. And as an audio-visual thinker, a lot of times when people are saying things, my fever dream ass will be picturing imagery of things that aren't that are parallel to that I can put through it. So maybe I'm talking to Ryan Tate, who's talking about how the guy who replaced him for a few months while he came back home to get surgery in Africa was assassinated in the streets by some of the poaching syndicates. Maybe in that moment, and by maybe I mean I was sitting there picturing, you know, Ryan Reynolds and Denzel Washington in Safe House, and Denzel gets assassinated, even though that plot is totally different. Correct. The setting is there. And Ryan's got red hair, Ryan Reynolds has red hair. I'm like, all right, here we go. Everybody wins. Yeah. So then when I made clips, what do you think I used with that? Right? I used a lot of B-roll from Safe House and some other movies to make it seem together. Even if I had different movies that had different color patterns on the images, I would try to color correct them to make them look like they're from the same thing. This is really sick shit. Yeah. But once I made that bet, I had started in the first 86 episodes, I did get some people who I just happen to know to come in, right? Sprinkled in there. So like Special Agent Jim DiOrio.
Which is amazing.
Who had never been public. And I know you're friends with him now too, which is great.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Of course, man. That's my guy. But I brought him in, and people see his resume and they're like, how the fuck? And then they hear him talk. They're like, how has he never been on a podcast? And I could make a viral clip all day.
Right. Oh, he's hot take central.
Yeah. And then I had in Louisa, who's more in your mob lane. Yeah. Another one who blew up all over the internet with clips. And, you know, Nick Castellucci, some guys who had backstories. And so I would just, like, I never thought about, oh, let's get a clip. When I sat down for a podcast, I said, all right, we're going to talk for 3 hours. There will be something in there at the end. I'll figure it out later. So to me, it was just making whatever I could, little pieces viral, and not focus on the episode going viral. But, like, we would get residual people over and be like, yo, who's this fucking jerk off in a backwards hat making all these clips? Yeah. I got to go check out this podcast. Yeah. And so then episode 87 was where we brought in, you know, the first Cold from the Streets guy, Raj Rajaratnam. Yeah. Amazing. Who was a big guest and somebody, a fan who I'm now very good friends with. Shout out Mark McCrane. He was friends with Raj, and he reached out to me when the shorts were going really viral on YouTube and said, hey, have you ever heard of Raj Rajaratnam? And I said, does a bear shit in the woods? Yes, I know Raj Rajaratnam. So for people out there, He was on the front page of every newspaper from 2009 to 2011. He was the face of the prosecutions against Wall Street post-financial crisis, even though he was a fucking hedge fund guy and it had nothing to do with the financial crisis. Everyone sees the word Wall Street, they think the same thing. And so the feds, they were afraid to go after the people involved in the housing crisis because the cases had no precedence. And so they did not want to lose. So they said, all right, we need words Wall Street on something. Let's go after all the hedge fund guys, of which there are some very slimy guys in that, I might add, and get them all on this insider trading thing, which if people remember the plot of Wall Street in 1987, you know, that's slimy insider trading. Most insider trading that happens on Wall Street at those high levels, though, it's not like that. It's kind of hard to avoid never having an insider trade because you're just around so much information. But they really, when the Raj case went through, again, I was in high school. I was like a freshman in high school following it in the media. I thought he was guilty as sin. Yep. When I connected with him for the first time, Mark got me on Zoom with him. We all met. He asked me what I thought. And I said, you know, I thought you were guilty as fuck. But, like, I didn't think it was, like, that bad of a crime. I couldn't believe they gave you 11 years. I didn't feel personally harmed by it. Correct. I'll put it that way. I don't think you're a danger to society. But, you know, I thought you were guilty. And he goes, fair enough. Like, no problem. And so he said, all I ask is, you know, but before I come in, just at least check out my book. Because he said it's my side, so it's the bias side from my side, but there was no bias side from my side. There was only the other side. Yeah. And so I did that. And that podcast, the next one I do with Raj, which I'll do at a special time because really good guy, but I'll do a way better job on the next one.
You did well.
I appreciate that, but like I was so nervous because it was one of about 4 podcasts I've ever prepared for, and actually that one I really like. It was like a month of preparation that it was also an unpopular stance to take because as I did the preparation, I was going to my dad, who's a lawyer, asking him legal questions about stuff, and we're looking at it, and I'm like, this guy got fucked. Yeah, like like plain and simple, this guy got fucked. And so he's coming in, and I'm like, I don't know if there's a more unpopular stance you can take than saying this billionaire hedge funder is innocent as fuck. And so I was so nervous.
Free the rich.
I kept thinking in my head about every little frame of someone being like, but you didn't ask him this. Yeah. So the whole time, the whole podcast, he would talk for like a minute. I'd be like, yeah, but what about that other thing too? Remember the thing? And he was loving it because he's like, all right, you know my case. This is great. Yeah. But I'm like, damn, he's such a... Even despite this whole thing and what people think, he's a legendary investor.
100%.
You'd love to just let that guy rip for 4 hours. Yeah. So, you know, I appreciate that you thought that one was good. The next one will be way better. But it was a big episode because it was the first time I had someone I didn't previously know or was really connected to come in. He came in from New York that day. We had a great day. Nice. And then I met Danny Jones shortly after that. He and I became best friends quickly.
Concrete.
And Danny was the guy. Yeah, now Danny Jones podcast used to be Concrete. But Danny was the guy who just planted some seeds in my head. Like he hooked me up with Matt Cox, who was his boy, who he blew up online. And because he wanted to talk to Jim. He's like, all right, I'll give you Matt, and then I want you to talk to my guy Andy too. And then can you just give me Jim? I was like, yeah. So I said, well, how's Matt going to get here? And he goes, I'll just buy him a flight. I haven't looked at flights in years. I mean, I was always poor. I wasn't flying places unless it was business, and that was taken care of by the company, right? So I can't even remember the last time I bought a flight for myself, and I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean just buy a flight? Yeah. I'm like, what do you think this is? I live in my parents' house. I have no money. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, just... So I talked to Matt. I'm trying to find my way around it, like as far as like, all right, well... maybe we can get you other podcasts when you're up here too. And then I'm like, fuck it, we're doing it. Yeah. So I bought him the flight. It wasn't as bad as I thought. And then that started the whole era of flying people in, and it opened up what I could do, right? I had in the history of the podcast before I moved up to Hoboken, episode 164, I guess, 163. in the history of the podcast, I'd had like 65, 70 people come from New York City. So that was always doable.
Yeah.
They'd come down for 2 hours. It didn't matter if it was just a friend or whatever. I was
Yeah.
always honored by that they came there. But then once you could also then work in like, all right, let's fly in some dude from fucking Peru, you know, to talk, then, you know, it turns into something and you're like, whoa, it just gives you access and it changes the game. So since the beginning, my goal has always been whatever we're going to talk about, whoever I'm talking with or whatever we're going to be talking about, my only rule is I got to be interested in it.
Correct.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the bar. And that's kind of to my detriment because I have ADD, so I'm all over the place. So I have all different interests, which is not great short term for building on YouTube. YouTube likes niches. So
it does like niches.
Right. So sometimes that like right now it's been hurting me, but long term I want to be known as the guy who does all different things. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So it's a good price to pay, but that's always what I did. And then the only thing that changed was once I was able to start getting people who I didn't previously know that maybe I could find a connection to or something, which is usually how it happened. To this day, I think I've only had 5 cold people in there.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to get some like cold reach outs in there. They're going to start filing in like this year.
That's awesome.
But, you know, it was always through my network and through my relationships. Like, oh, you want to talk to this guy? Yes, I want to talk to that guy. Oh, you know this guy? Yeah, I know that guy. You want to talk to him?
That's how it
Yeah,
happens,
I want to talk to him. And so it just started moving towards the expectation of the level of expertise that I might be talking to on a given day would go up overall. I'd still do podcasts with some of my boys, though. They do less views, but like that's what I want to do.
Correct.
You know, right now we're in a bill situation where I can't totally afford to do that at the moment, but the instant I can, I'm going to do that again because it pisses me off that I can't do it at this second.
Yeah.
You know, but I have people relying on me. I got a lessee that I got to pay, and then I have some of the contract editors we just brought on that I got to at least get them their contract edits, and I got to bring in a couple other full-time guys. So the longer every time I spend time on an episode,
the time's more valuable.
Right. That's a lot of hours. So I want to be at a point though where, you know, I get good enough that people are just gonna they won't care as much what the topic is. They're just looking to get their 3 hours of escape with Julian and whoever he's got riding with him that day. And I think we can get there, but you have to earn that. You got to earn that from people. So I respect that. And that's that's the only change. But the concept of, all right, I'm interested in it, let's do it. That is what guides me. And if it wasn't what guided me, it would ruin the show.
Yeah. I want to unpack that a little bit because there was a lot to unpack. But the first part I want to unpack, and this kind of appeals to New Theory core audiences. Who was his name? Preet?
Preet Bharara.
Yeah. So not a big fan of him. I don't think Trump was either. I think he fired him. And
I don't think he's a good guy.
They basically pulled the mob prosecutorial playbook
with Raj
for like a hedge fund guy who's like, you know, an immigrant success story. Give us like the 88 and 0, the Wall Street guy, the informants. Like unpack that. So because you're gonna listen to Julian speak now, and you're gonna say it's not much different than what Comey did with Sammy the Bull and that type of thing. You know, go through, you know.
Yeah. So Preet Bharara was the lead prosecutor for the Southern District of New York, which I mean, lawyers would know this better than me, but I do follow some of this stuff. I would say it's the most important district in America. It has some of the craziest.
Southern's probably number one. Eastern's probably two.
Right, and then you have what's the one in? There's one or two in California. That's where the argument might be with people. But either way, you get the point. Yeah. And so what I had been saying a little bit ago was that they didn't want to prosecute the financial crisis guys because the cases didn't have precedent. They were going to lose some of those cases. Yeah. And this is what I don't like about the culture we have. The culture we have is that there's levels to it politically, and then you have to do things that are sellable to rise to the next level. So unfortunately, on a Tuesday in November when you're running an ad and you're, I don't know, the governor or something, and you're touting your record on stuff, you don't want to tout a prosecutor who was 77-13. You want to tout the guy who's 88-0 or 90-0 in that case if the numbers are the same, right? And so it creates this incentive structure where we are now at a point that in criminal trial in the United States in federal court, the United States has a 97% conviction rate. Now, if it were 70, some people might say that's still high. I'd say that's probably fair.
Yeah.
97 is fucking ridiculous.
That's nuts.
So you have guys who either aren't all the way guilty, maybe they're guilty of a couple things, but not everything, or aren't guilty at all, going to prison. It is an incentive structure that's a problem. So with Raj, and I've said this to his face, I mean, he's an unbelievably brilliant guy, like one of the smartest human beings you will ever meet in your life, top 10 investor to ever live, genius. Yeah. If there's one thing he's guilty of, it's being naive. I will give him that because he's an immigrant, and he's open about this. He had no awareness of how the federal conviction rate and stuff like that. So Raj, they tapped his phones, and they started building this case against him. And the main goal of it was actually synonymous with the plot of the show Billions. You ever seen that on Showtime?
That favorite show.
So Axelrod is supposed to be Steve Cohen, who now owns the Mets. And Steve Cohen is the greatest trader to ever live. Yeah. Regardless of some of the dirty ways you think he plays sometimes, he's the greatest trader to ever walk on a corridor on Wall Street. Yeah. And so he had a hedge fund called SAC Capital. It's now called, I think, Point 72 is the new one, right? And the feds wanted him. That was their guy. Raj was a top 10 guy, probably top 5 in the world.
Cohen's probably like 1 or 2.
Cohen was 1. Yeah. And so the feds believed, this immigrant, we'll get to him, we'll make him shit himself, we'll offer him probation, he'll roll right the fuck over because he had a relationship with Steve. Yeah. That is not what happened.
Interesting.
Raj was so unaware of how this works that when they arrested him, they spent $1.5 million on the arrest raid in his apartment on the East River. Like, they had duck boats and shit outside. Like, no disrespect to Raj, I don't think he's the guy who's taking a run for it. That's just me. I also will bet he probably didn't have any guns in the house. Yeah, no. But, they did this and then they had the media outside to take the pictures because, again, they wanted the headlines. Preet's office had 15 people working on their PR team. Right, if you are a government lawyer and you have a 15-person PR team, as a taxpayer, that should piss you off. That's not where I want my tax dollars going. Correct. So anyway, they take him downtown. Raj talked to the FBI without a lawyer for 3-4 hours. They had him handcuffed to a radiator, and he sat there answering questions because he's like, "This is what you do. You answer questions." He's like, "What are you arresting me for? Insider trading." "Oh, I didn't do that. What do you want to know?" And they're probably like, "What an idiot." But that's just what he thought. Then they gave him record bail at the time. It was like $100 million or something. I remember that. And Raj decides, again, like, he's worth so much money. He can spend whatever he wants on defense. He's like, "All right, well, I didn't do anything. So, well, no problem. We'll take this to court." Yeah. And, oh, my God, the number of constitutional violations. I mean, even if you are sitting at home and you say he was guilty as all sin of this, for a second, hypothetically, let's tell you were right. The case never should have gone to trial. There was I believe it's called a Franks hearing that occurred before the trial, which is a hearing in which the government has to defend the constitutionality of the evidence that they put together for the case. And I think it might refer directly to anything relating to wiretaps. Okay. The entire case was built on these wiretaps of Raj's phone. Yeah. Right? Now, mind you, you're wiretapping someone for a year, 2 years. You're recording thousands of hours of them talking on the phone, and you're taking little 10, 20, 30-second snippets and making it sound like, they're Dr. fucking evil. Yep. And so the FBI had broken every law known to man. Shocker. And remind me to tell you the Jim and Ryan Tate story. I don't want to forget that. Yeah. But they had broken every law known to man to get these wiretaps allowed. There's I think it's in FISA court or something. There's a bunch of things they have to do to get the judge to sign off on it, and they had provably lied on all that. So that all comes out in the Franks hearing. The agent who was responsible was forced to testify and admitted on the stand they had lied about all of it.
Oh, they admitted on the stand?
Yeah. So what happens is at the end of that, the judge is supposed to say, "Okay, you lied. It's tossed out." And if they toss out the wiretaps, the charges are dropped. There's no trial. The judge at the end, I don't have the quote in front of me, but the judge at the end says the government lied, the FBI messed up how you do this. This was not supposed to be allowed, but I'll allow them. So they allowed it at trial, and that same judge who got his own white-collar law firm as soon as this trial was over, by the way.
$5 million job
right away. It was his own law firm. They opened it up. He does his PBS Frontline interview, and he said, I got to admit, with wiretaps, it's tough because you get a guy on a wiretap calling his mom saying he'll be home for spaghetti that night. He sounds guilty of something. Doesn't matter what it is. And he's so right about that. And you just look at it, the government needed a win. And all these same prosecutors came together, including Preet 10 years later, after this trial, 9 years later, and did this commission on the gray area, the difficulty and problematic nature of the insider trading laws, and wrote up how none of it really, a lot of it, doesn't make sense because it's very hard to prove criminal intent or whether someone even knew they were acting on insider information. So we need to change the laws. So they're and all the guys, all the prosecutors outside of Preet got jobs at white collar law firms defending against insider trading right after this trial was over. So all the same guys who prosecuted the fuck out of this guy, did all this shit to him, threw him in jail for 11 years. He ended up doing 7.5 next to Kim Kardashian. But that was the longest sentence in U.S. history at the time for insider trading. All these same people then monetized the fuck out of that and then had the gall to set up a commission to say, oh, you know what? That shouldn't even be a law 9 years later. That is certifiably insane. And so it might be unpopular, but I reviewed every end of his case. There was, oh my God, this was another one. So his younger brother was not he wasn't like the VP or anything. He was like a portfolio.
I remember he had a brother, yeah.
Yeah, he was a portfolio manager. So, he's probably 2-3 rungs down from Raj. He's one of the top 40 guys at the company, but not top 10. Yeah. 2 years later, in 2013, Raj is now in prison. He gets convicted in 2011. Oh, by the way, sorry, there's so many things here. They went to Raj from day one when he was sitting in the FBI's office going, hey, all right, we got you. You can just do probation. Just tell us what we want to know, because they wanted Cohen. And he said, no, I didn't do anything wrong. This is America. I'll go to trial. It's no problem. And they kept saying it as they got closer to the trial. And then in the trial, they're like, come on, dude, roll over. And he wouldn't do it. So when he gets convicted, he's facing 25 years in prison. They're like, okay, well, now you're going to go to prison. But do you want it to be a year or two, or do you want it to be up to 25? Just tell us what we want to know about Cohen. And he said, fuck you, send me to prison. The guy's a gangster. The guy is a fucking gangster. You can take a lot of things from him. That motherfucker said, I'm worth billions of dollars and I'll take my ass to prison. Go fuck yourself.
Wow.
Right? He really believed in his, not just his case, but in, I guess, his integrity that way. And so there were actually guys who were convicted in separate cases related to him who didn't like him through all this stuff that happened.
Well, there was a course line of informants not only lined up against them, incentivized to roll similar to mob cases, but also coached.
Oh yeah. So the main witness against him, the other defendant in a separate case was Rajat Gupta, who was the head of McKinsey, who later went to the same prison Raj was at, and they didn't like each other at this point, but respected Raj for never rolling on him. It was like, you could have, and you didn't. And so they have an interesting relationship.
Dynamic, yeah.
But what the fuck was the other guy's name, the main witness, the high-level consultant from McKinsey? Oh my God.
We could figure it out in post.
Yeah. If you could pull that out. But that guy is the reason Raj went to prison.
It was his Sammy the Bull kind of, right?
It was yes. And the deliberations on Raj's trial were 14 days, by the way. This was not easy for the jury. And which tells you they also didn't dislike the guy.
Yeah.
They ended up convicting him, but they felt a certain type of way about it. And again, no disrespect, but the people in that jury, they're not exactly, numbers crunchers.
This is complicated stuff.
It's very complicated.
I never worked on Wall Street, but I have somewhat of a financial background, have an MBA, and when that came out, I remember right off the bat, this guy's a bad guy, and that was I don't know if it was around.
They made him seem like Hitler.
What was that like? Free Wall Street. What was that movement?
Occupy Wall
Occupy
Street.
Wall Street.
The people were outside his. It was
Yeah,
at the height
that.
of it. They were outside his trial with the signs. But
That's crazy.
The main guy that put him away was coached up, and so I was mentioning his brother. This is where this is going to tie in. So Raj gets found guilty. He gets sent to prison. He's appealing his case. I read all the appeal rulings, by the way. It's mind blowing. On the last day of the statute of limitations, his brother, who again was rungs down from him at the company, he's in Brazil, and Preet indicts him because he's like, oh, he'll never come back now, and we'll get a win because he won't come back. Gets on the first flight back to New York. Says, send me to trial, bitch.
Wow.
Goes to trial. Here's what happens. Now he's in prison. Raj's wife gets a call from that main witness. I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah.
Crying on the phone saying, listen, I'm being told to come in and testify against Raj's brother tomorrow. I just want to let you know now I'm going to tell the truth, and hopefully he'll get off because of that. And I'm very sorry that Raj went to prison. I hope you can understand. Wow. I had to do what I had to do. And she hung up on him. And so he goes in, he testifies the opposite of what he testified at Raj's trial about the same stocks, the same trades. So Raj's brother gets found not guilty inside of 3 hours, which means the jury did. This is a case where it takes 3 days just to look at the initial numbers. The jury didn't even let the pizza get there.
Wow.
They found him not guilty on all charges.
Holy shit.
Right? And so Raj, of course, puts in an appeal.
Yeah, like a Rule 33 or something like that, right? Yeah.
Your main witness just testified the opposite of what he did in mine. You got to throw. And we read I read it. I gave it to my dad. We read the judgment back, and it was like it's like you ever look around and you're in the Twilight Zone, like you're a ghost and people can't see you, but you feel like you're still here. That's what it's like. It's like waking up and you're dead, but you feel like you're in the world, and then I put my hand through you and you just walk right through me. That's what it felt like with those judges ruling, and I couldn't even imagine.
Was it his judge? They bring it back up, or was
no,
it
it was a different judge.
Okay, so it was like an appellate court type thing, or a different judge who looked at it?
Yeah, all of it was different. The judge on his brother's trial was different because that judge was now in private practice.
Of course, making millions,
Raj, right? And then the judges in the appeals court, wherever the fuck they were.
Yeah.
And so they fucked him, and that main witness was actually a bad guy. He was doing awful shit. He was abusing his housekeeper, who was. It's part of the caste system in India. She was lower. He was Indian. She was lower on the caste system. They had her in America, and they like I forget all the details, but like they would make her do things that were going to hide all his taxes, and then they'd pay her like nothing and gave her no rights, and like wouldn't let her like return home, like all kinds of messy shit. He was a bad guy.
And he got immunity probably, right?
He got immunity from it. He got probation for all the crimes that they caught him doing. And so it raises the question of, well, how do you do a witness? Because, of course, they're just going to say whatever the government coaches them to say. But you look at that case, it has problems everywhere, all over the place. And they never got Cohen. They were able to sue SAC and shut down SAC, and now it became .72, and he owns the Mets, and he's worth tens of billions of dollars. But they never got him. That's who they wanted. And they made that clear to Raj from day one, to roll over on him. And he was like, fuck you. I'm not rolling over. Like, I have nothing to say. He doesn't work in my we were at different companies. What do you want me to even say about that? Like, that's like me.
Yeah.
That's like me. Let's assume our podcasts were like investing businesses. Yeah. They're not. That's like someone coming to me and saying, Julian, we need you to tell us everything that Tom is doing, even though I never have sat in your studio until right now. We're friends, but I don't come and sit here in the lead up to
know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
So it didn't even make sense.
Wow.
But that's how stupid and how easily played we are in the public. And I'm a part of it because I was played like a fucking fiddle just like everyone else. Yeah. And so unpopular stance to take, but I told you I was going to tell you a story about Jim and Ryan.
Please.
With Raj. Last November 2022, I'm at Raj's townhouse office in Manhattan, and I have in there Jim Diorio, from former FBI, Ryan Tate, who is a friend of mine who's been on the podcast, episode 117. He's the founder and CEO of VetPaw,
Oh,
which
yeah.
fights against the international poaching syndicates to protect elephants and
Nice.
rhinos and lions and all endangered
That's dope.
species in Africa, which they're amazing. And he's a veteran. He was a Marine and served in Afghanistan and Iraq. And then I had Mark McCrane, who's a friend of mine who was the original connection to Raj. And then this guy, Jason Flom, who is one of the co-founding board members of the Innocence Project.
Oh, wow.
Which, works
Yeah.
to get innocent people out of prison.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to have a meeting just to kind of connect Jason and Raj, because Raj had told me, one of the things I asked him is, I said, why are you going out of your way to face the bullets on this again in public? You served your time.
Yeah.
You're worth billions of dollars. You got your family.
Yep.
You got your life. Why are you not throwing up the middle finger saying fuck you and enjoying it? He
Beach
goes, well,
on a,
he goes, look,
bombs.
I am enjoying life. But he goes, when I was in prison, I figured out, I'm trying to remember the exact percentages, but 25 to 30% of people in there are innocent of at least some of the things they were forced to agree to or were found guilty of with trial by punishment.
Wow, that's crazy.
10% of people around that number are fully innocent. And he said the difference between all them and me is that almost none of them had any money. They had no ability to fight the government. He said, I could have fought the government 1 billion times over and outspent them to the wazoo, and they did it to me.
Yeah.
So if I don't help, who's gonna?
Good point.
Like, it tells you that there's something wrong with the system when even a guy who, he's like, I have power, I have
Correct.
money,
Yeah.
I have the best defense you can afford,
Yep.
and I got fucked.
Yep. What about
What
you
do
and me?
what do you think's happening to the other people in that 97%?
Yeah.
And so he feels a real calling to that. He walks the talk with that stuff. So we get them in a room together, and for this is probably a 2-hour meeting, but the first hour, Jason and Raj are going back and forth. And what it would be is Raj would be asking Jason about a bunch of his cases that he works on behalf of guys at Innocence Project, because he's very hands-on with that.
Yeah.
And then Jason would be asking Raj about his case. And, even though it's years later, every time Raj has to go through this, he's got to relive it.
Yeah.
And it pisses you off.
Yeah.
Right? And so about an hour in, you could see Raj, Jason asked him something about the case, and it was like a personal point. You could see Raj explaining it and getting pissed off.
Yeah.
Because he's you'd see it. I'm sitting next to him. He's reliving it in his head. And he stops. He leans back. He's like, my case was my case. I paraphrase this every time, but this is the gist of what he said. My case was my case. And there's a lot of fucked up things that happen in it.
Yeah.
But he said, don't get lost on the fact that I am so grateful to live in this country.
Yeah. Still.
There is a reason why people do not immigrate to Russia or China. They come here. He goes, this country has been great to me. It has been great to my family. And Jim and Ryan are sitting back what the fuck? I'd be shitting on everything right now. Now, they're both veterans, right? And so, because Jim was in the Special Forces for years and years, West Point guy. And he goes, it has been so great to me and my country, or to me and my family. And he goes, look, no matter how great a country or place may be, everywhere has its flaws. And I have the platform and the resources to be able to help fix something that I think is a horrible flaw in our system. And it's because I love this country and I want to make it better. It is not because I hate this country and I don't want to be here. I love being here. This is an amazing place. I wouldn't trade it all for the world. I have lived an amazing life. And at the end of that, you got Jim and Ryan on the verge of tears.
Yeah.
Jim apologized to Raj on behalf of the FBI.
That's crazy.
For how they conducted the case, and said, look, I worked my cases. I know a lot of good agents who work theirs. It's a big place. That's not how the good agents seeing business
Jim saw
done.
holes?
Of course he saw holes. He said the whole case, the case is the fucking Titanic.
That's crazy.
It's just got holes all in the entire hole. It was illegal. Even before
That's
you
nuts.
get to guilt or innocence. All right, you want to have an argument about that? Go have an argument about that. Even before you get there, it was illegal.
So
completely.
I want to bring an important point, and probably more me than you, but for my podcast historically, when I started out, I did interview a lot of informants on kind of on the mob side, and
You don't say.
Yeah, exactly. And people will disagree. I do feel there is a spectrum, not of, but for informants, whether it be, you need them for obviously pedophilia cases, you need them for sex trafficking, you need them
Yes.
for terrorism, and you do need them for organized crime. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, right? However, how do you balance? Let's say it's a podcaster. Let's go your wheelhouse. You can kind of own your thoughts. How do you balance? Hey, you know what? I want to interview a Raj who got fucked, right? But then, I'll interview maybe somebody who's an informant who helped the greater good for maybe the country or something else. Like, how do you reconcile the informant who kind of a scumbag, right? But may have did the right thing. Betrayed his oath or betrayed his kind of brethren, if you will. But it provides either good content, provides some views, right, or fits, your, I guess, moral compass. How do you balance that? 'Cause I'll give you an example. In the mob genre space, like, I'll interview an informant, and then like the next day, like my head will be on a penis. Like, the trolls come out, right? Like big time. We'll talk about ideal trolls in a second. Yeah. But give me kind of how you walk through that kind of moral minefield.
Well, first of all, a lot of people, for a lot of things, say something along the lines of this, and your example here is certainly one of them. Yeah. If I were blank, then I would blank, or then I would never blank. Yeah. You don't know that till you're in those shoes. That
I agree with that wholeheartedly. That's the foundation for every purpose. Now, but you and I are smart enough to never be put in that situation, I believe.
I would like to think so, for sure. I certainly think so.
Yeah. All right, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, but guys come from the environment they do. Yeah. They get into situations they do. And sometimes I think some of them rectify it in their heads so they can live with themselves. And other times I think it legitimately becomes an untenable situation where maybe they have been a stand-up guy for a long time and they keep getting fucked and they see that people are turning on them and they go, fuck it. Yeah. And I think it gets tough. I think it's a case-by-case basis. I haven't dealt with a ton of it. Louisa never ratted on somebody.
Yeah, you Raj evaded that.
Yeah, Raj never ratted on anybody. Tim McBride never ratted on anybody. Matt Cox did. He's the one that did, but he's also, it's different though. Like Matt is, I mean, Matt's our snitch, right? Yeah. But he's not, he was a sole criminal. He never ratted on
it was a part of a global organization
that were in his case. Yeah. He ratted on people once he got into prison that, would tell him stupid shit. And there are people who feel a type of way about that. Yeah. What I like about Matt, and he's a friend, is that he is brutally honest. Yeah. He doesn't run from any of it. He's the only guy who had the balls to say, listen, if you tell me something, you're an idiot because I'm going to talk about it.
Told somebody that, I think it was your show or one of his shows, he kind of was like, don't tell me anything. I'm a snitch. And then yet they proceeded to tell them.
Yeah, he's like, you shouldn't be telling me, pal. And then they told him. And then the best is he goes when Ron comes up to that every time, that face, he goes, no, Ron. Say it ain't so. He's like, yeah, they got me on the Ponzi. No, they found the Ponzi? No way.
Oh, my God.
He's like, I'm the one that did it. But, yeah, I mean, people feel a type of way about that. I don't, if I ever had in like a, because like the mob, you and I have talked about this a lot. This was my topic growing up.
Yes, you love this.
I wrote papers on this in high school. I got assigned a paper to write on the Sicilian Mafia. And I went, this is before anyone was ever looking at the mob. I was the mob historian and none of my friends knew shit or would ever talk about it. And then years later, like 2017, 2018, people started really getting into it.
And you were near like Cherry Hill area, which was a hotbed.
Yeah, I'm like, where you been all my life, right? Yeah. So it's a topic I love. We haven't done a ton of it on the podcast, but now I've done a couple. We did Sal Bonanno, Joe Bonanno's grandson.
That's exciting.
I was nerding out on that because he even looked just like him. Yeah. And then recently we're gonna have an episode coming out, one with Johnny Russo, who was Carlo in The Godfather, who's had some mob history in his life.
Yeah, but he embellishes a little bit. He said he blew the doors.
He definitely does. I have a lot of thoughts there, but. Very interesting guy. I had a lot of fun with him. But then I had in Lou Ferrante as well. He's going to be coming out. He was a Gambino writer.
I just had him on. He did it in studio a few weeks ago. I just launched. I didn't know you did.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
How did you find him, or you got pitched him?
Mark McCrane, same guy with Raj Rajaratnam, knew Lou.
Lou's great.
Yeah, Lou's awesome. Lou was out of the game when he was 24.
Correct.
Another guy didn't rat.
Well, he was facing like a RICO and like football numbers.
Well, he went to prison for
and
a
then
while.
I think he got it on an appeal. I think, right?
He got out at the end of his sentence on appeal.
That's
but
great.
he
Lou's such a
did
good
like
guy.
8.5, 9 years.
So
This is when he was a baby. I mean, he was blowing up when he was 24,
Correct.
and then he goes to prison. He's 54 now. He's
Yeah.
hosted Discovery Channel
Gangster
documentaries
Code,
for years.
Yeah.
He's written 7 books. I'm very out of the life.
Yeah.
You know? and he is. But interesting guy. He has a thought or two on rats because he never did it.
Well,
And
he
there's a
said
part of me that I get that.
He said, and if you watching this, especially this far, you probably watch a Lou Ferrante interview. But he said something interesting because I'm still like, I'll be candid. I'm wrestling with, kind of how I'm going to go. And I had this little kind of belief that you always had to go to the source, right? Go to the informant or go for the source. But like, I get good numbers with the gym. Andy's numbers were really good because I think Andy did a lot more press. But Jim DiOrio get pretty good numbers. Didn't go super deep on the mob stuff. Andrew, I focused on the CIA and business. Lou, ex-mob guy, but like didn't inform. So like one of the learnings, and I'm going to ask you, one of the learnings that I have initially was, wow, you're going to talk directly to an informant. You're going to talk to a made guy. Like you kind of got to go to the source,
Yeah.
However, like I'm finding out that I've had people on that were maybe like kind of serendipitous to the life, peripheral, or even in that life, but like kind of adequately reformed without snitching. My question to you is, was there a learning that you've had? You started out a certain way and had a certain belief and then kind of pivoted, whether it be, the numbers were different, the response was different, or maybe philosophically you've changed. Any kind of pivots throughout your kind of creative career so far?
No, again, I do things against my own interests. Like, I'll tell you one topic that does not work anymore that I continue to do when it's there because I'm interested in it is true crime. Yeah. Right? Like, if I want to have on Matt Cox, I'm going to have on Matt Cox, whether it works or not, because he's fucking hilarious, right? Great. It used to work. Yeah. Right? But this is just something we've noticed, Danny Jones and I have noticed on more broad podcasts that do different things for whatever reason. That's a topic that the algo doesn't like to push anymore. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if I want to do it, I'm doing it.
You're doing it.
Maybe I'm not doing it. Yeah. Maybe with true crime, if I know it's not working right now, all right, I'm not going to do one every 3 episodes. But if I'm like Lou, that was like a last minute one where I'm like, oh, Mark just introduced me to Lou. We have an opening. Lou, you want to come in?
That's great.
Fuck yeah. I had so much fun in
It's
that
funny. I didn't know you had him on. I was going to recommend him anyway.
He's hilarious.
Yeah. He's not in town that often.
No. He's down in Florida usually. Yeah. But, you got to lean on the things that get you going. Good. And again, I got ADD. So if I'm not interested in it, you're going to know. Yeah. I'm going to be fucking over here. And that's not good for anybody. It's not fair to the person you're talking to.
All right. So one of the things that we kind of chatted about today, and we chatted a little bit offline too, is, interviewing style, how you talk to people. And one of the things I like about you is, and I hope I'm similar, where you're not a super gotcha guy, right? But you're also able to kind of tease out like complex topics. So give us kind of like your interviewing strategy, right? Because if you're the gotcha guy, you can get a lot more hot takes. You can probably get more views. Return guests might be tough, but you're not the I gotcha guy, but you're able to tease out important and meaningful discussions. Walk us through your kind of interviewing strategy.
My strategy is that I don't have a strategy and I don't interview people. I've never done an interview in my life. Wow. I just talk with people. It's all I do is we turn the cameras on and now we have mics and headphones, but it's no different from everything I did in my life before that. My job is not to be there and get this thing out of people, but for whatever reason, I could guess it at some things, but for whatever reason, I'm honored that people feel really comfortable to share some pretty wild things in my studio. Yeah, and I think if I ever thought about it, it wouldn't happen. My goal is to just have an off-the-cuff convo and go where they want it to go. I've had a line for people. I'm like, look, they'll be like, oh, so what do you want to talk about? I'm like, whatever the fuck you want to. And they're like, but what do you mean? I'm like, look, if you want to talk about the size of the trees outside, by all means, knock yourself out, right? We'll figure out something with it. I mean, they look like they're fucking 100 feet in the air. There's got to be, there's interesting things about that, I'm sure. So, and probably still 1 out of 4 or 5 guests will be like, what the fuck are we going to do? And then about halfway through, when we inevitably have to stop because I have to piss, they're like, oh, they either say, I get it now, or there's the look on their face like, oh, this is easy. Yeah. This is so easy. Yeah. You know, it's funny sometimes when I have in authors and they're so used to the, you know, half hour, they're being asked 7 questions, whatever. Yeah. You can see like their body will start like this. And then within 15 minutes, it'll be like this. Yeah. And then within 20 minutes, it'll be like this. Love it. And then within about a half hour, it'll be like this. And then within about 45 minutes, it'll be like this. And then within an hour, it'll be like this. And you'll watch. It's like watching a fucking caterpillar come out of its cocoon, and then suddenly, whoo, they're a butterfly. That's it, man. The approach is just turn on the cameras and nothing changes.
What do you do when, and I have to say, probably for me, maybe yours is lower because it's more conversational, but I would say 10 to 15% of the time, I just simply do not connect with that person. That's really important for me. I'm not saying we have to be best friends or have to like you. I could talk to somebody I'm opposed to, somebody I'm even morally against, but I'm trying to tease out or unpack what they're doing. But sometimes I just don't connect, and I personally feel it affects the quality of the interview. What do you do when you just can't connect with somebody, or has it happened?
I don't think that's ever happened.
Oh, well.
Does it happen to you, though, when you're doing Zooms?
And more Zooms, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, see, I don't have any experience with that, and I guarantee you it would happen all the time with that.
Well, because in person, there's certain preface. I'm driving here, right? It's almost like if you go somewhere and you drive somewhere, right? And you pick something up at the store and you buy it and you drove an hour and it's like, oh my God, I got it. And you go home versus getting it like delivered via Amazon. Right, you have more of an appreciation for it. So I guess maybe you're right. And then let's just say you and I didn't connect at all. I think I'd probably be able to find some common ground because I put a lot more authority to it. Yeah. So that's actually a good point. What's some of your, so podcasting, and you touched on a lot of it earlier, podcasting is a business, right? And although you came from a finance background, being an entrepreneur, you're not a solopreneur anymore because you have a team, but being an entrepreneur, I know when you were a solopreneur, it's funny because I see this one guy. Well, no, but I see this a lot where, when you're a solopreneur, you're editing and doing everything yourself. You're actually probably even making more money because you're like not outsourcing and doing everything yourself. And then you become an entrepreneur where you have a team and nobody works better and faster than you, but you need to scale and you need a team. So how are you going from kind of a solopreneur to entrepreneur? And then number 2, if you had to prioritize growth or profit in the next year for the podcast, what would you do? If you could unpack those questions.
So number 1 is I'm working on it. I'm really good at advising people on business.
Oh, 100%.
That's what I came from. 100%. I know all the answers in that way, from a broad perspective. I'm terrible at advising myself. Yeah. I am for myself sometimes an awful businessman.
The plumber with the leaky pipe?
Yeah, and that's why, now I have some people in my ear who are calmly helping me with that and being very patient, I might add, as well, because, I got dumb questions, because I'm an overthinker, right? I over-fucking think everything. And so that's one thing. The other thing is, great way to ask that question about growth or profits. My goal with the entire podcast for the first 3.5 years of doing this was strictly growth. Whatever came, the bigger you are, the more abilities to make money. Correct. And then, of course, I didn't leverage any of those ways on the way up. So I left so much money on the table, which is why I should have been smarter with that. Yeah. But now growth is still 80%, but there is that very strong 20% of we need money to fund this shit. Correct.
Because you need profit to grow.
My goal is by the end of quarter 2 of this year. Yeah. What's that? End of June? Yeah. Yeah, July.
180 days.
Is to be at 35% focusing on the money coming in because now the money is going to drive the growth. And I need that to survive. I mean, I haven't, right now guests walk in and there's an old knockoff Oriental rug and there's no couch. Yeah. I like to buy a couch. Yeah. That would be good, but it's low on the
So how do you walk through though let's go through the business aspect for a second. So you're managing now a small business or an entrepreneurial concern. Yeah. What percentage, hey, do some on-air reads, where am I at with AdSense? Do you get, some donations? You have a Cash App up there. Do you do lives? Give us kind of like your marketing profit mix, if you
I
want.
have a very small Patreon.
Okay.
We're going to try to build that a little more. I've always had I don't like asking people for money.
I don't either.
That doesn't serve me well. I'm a very bad self-promoter.
Yeah.
Despite my career, I'm a very private guy.
Yeah.
So it's uncomfortable, like, telling me to share more things now on social media to build those. I have to do that.
Yeah.
I used to do that on Snapchat with my people. I mean, I love Snapchat growing up because it's a closed-end system, right? It wasn't public. It was just your friends fucking around. So I've shared like crazy on Snapchat, but other than that, I was never, I always had people pushing me to share on social media, which was good because it got me used to some of it at least before doing the podcast. But since starting the podcast, I share podcast stuff. Yeah. Where I don't share a lot of life stuff. And there's always going to be a line there for me.
But you're good at that, though. Meaning, like, I know you a little bit. I don't know you that well, but you're kind of good at sharing enough information to satisfy people. And if people dig deeper, then it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess people do, but I don't. I constantly get questions from, because I do talk with fans all the time. When people DM me, I try to answer it. Right, I answer as many comments as I can, as well publicly. But people are constantly asking about shit in my life, like basic stuff, because I just don't, it's just, look, part of it for me is one day I'm gonna have a wife and kids, right? And there's a little precedent there with some of this, and some of this I probably use as a cop-out for other things I could share very easily, that I kind of put it all under this umbrella, so I gotta fix that. But I don't know her right now. I don't think. Maybe I do, and it just hasn't happened yet. But when that does happen, I don't want to have the precedent of my family having to be public. Yeah. I don't want my kids
Good point.
to be all over the internet and people, all over them and whatever. I don't want my wife to, like, if she wants to be private, I want her to be private.
Good point.
And so if I start sharing even that kind, I mean, that's more the serious stuff, like relationships and things like that, and family. If I start
even
sharing,
where you go out to eat or travel or
but some of that, like, I should, like, I like Luca Brasi's in Hoboken, right? Those guys, shout out Johnny and his dad. They're cool. Like, I should probably share some of that stuff. Yeah. So there's a balance there. I'll work on that. But yeah, it's weird for me because, I mean, I avoided doing something like this my whole life. I always wanted to be the backroom dealer, and then I realized I didn't like the job I was in, and that's not really a thing anymore. Yeah. And so you have to accept it, and my talent happens to be something that involves speaking on camera, ironically enough. Yeah. It's very weird for me, but I don't... There's a balance there that I'm trying to find.
Yeah. Now, I get and it makes sense. You're a blocker and tackler, which I love. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna maximize the AdSense. I'm gonna, I have great agents with one of the biggest agencies in the world, which is phenomenal for you. And you're not gonna do the other stuff because the other stuff is also not, how do I say, scalable. You're focusing on more like almost asset management, if you will, right? More of an asset.
Yeah, I mean,
asset base versus service. Well, because if your service base is, hey, give me donations, or hey, I'm doing a live, and like organically get donations, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't ever knock how people make money, but you can't really scale that. Versus if you get more views, you get more AdSense, or if you get more views, you get better on-air reads. I'm a small channel again. I'm kind of getting out of the mob space, if you will, because it's just not a good space. The toxicity level is kind of high, but you at a much higher level. Walk us through like your troll management strategy. I'm being serious. Like my head is on the penis weekly, and like I'm like used to it at this point. like how do you like the memes and the clip channels and whatever that is? But like give us kind of like
bother me.
So do you get trolling
all the time? Yeah, I think it's very useful. Now,
trolling's useful.
I'm grateful.
Okay.
Every day
to have trolls. Your head on a penis.
Wasn't gonna say that.
Okay.
But I'm grateful every day that I did not figure out that this was my lane when I was 21, because I'd be dead right now.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
But when I was in my early 20s, I've never been a commenter on shit.
Yeah.
But I learned internet. I'm an only child. What do? I people watch. I study people. Right. And so I love studying comment sections like, oh my God, these people exist. This is really like this. And so I always look at it as useful. First of all, 80 to 90% of people who comment are going to be incentivized to do so negatively. Yeah. Negative is far more likely to instigate a reaction that you want to be public versus positive. Furthermore, when a clip or a video starts off where the comment section starts to skew negative, positive people don't like coming in because they're like, ooh, I don't want to get caught in the middle of this. Then they DM me. They feel like they're going to.
And more and it's led by faceless trolls,
right.
Who get that like serotonin rush, by irking the talent.
So and this is how fast it happens, right? I have YouTube Studio on my phone, and whenever I get a second to answer a comment in between stuff, I answer real fast. This is how fast it'll be. YouTube Studio open. All right, latest comment. Fuck you, Julian. This host is a cornball. He's an absolute fucking idiot. In my head, there's an instant calculation. All right, which of the 3 playbooks am I going to go to? Am I going to go the love playbook, like thank you with a bunch of heart emojis and get them to react like, oh, you're such a fucking asshole, which gets another comment out of them. It's engagement. We love that.
Doesn't hurt the algo.
Or am I going to come back at them like, fuck you, bro, I'll fuck your girl or something, which is also going to get a reaction out of them. That's another comment. Or am I going to come back and act like I'm really, really upset about it and try to defend it, which is going to get them to laugh at me, which is another comment. So as long as you're not letting it bother you, you're good. And I could count on my hand the number of times I actually was bothered on a given day by a set of comments in my history doing this. And then in the past 3 months, when we went through a really difficult time on YouTube where I was working around the clock, I would know what am I? I'm more tired than ever. I'm more angry than ever.
Ornery.
Exactly. And so I noticed there were some days where and I could go pull up some comments where I went back and I'll say, yo, that one was real. This was not this wasn't, it may look like my normal playbook, but I was fucking bothered by that. And so I've avoided it a little bit because I think it has a big part to do with how your vibes are. And my vibes have always just been kind of like happy and whatever. When I'm stressed, I think you actually can get bothered by it. So I've been putting myself back in the frame of, yo, these people are useful again, right? And it's what it is. Everyone deals with it. My friend Mitch Laxamana, in one of our first episodes we ever did, episode 16, I remember he had a line where he said, if people are ready to hate it, that means people are ready to love it too.
Yeah, good point.
And it's very true. If you don't have people that are hating on what you do, you have a problem. You know, I think you have to have that because if you're just getting great feedback, number one, it's hard to actually find where some criticism is right. I am constantly evaluating that to see where, even if someone's like being a dick about it, where are they right? And 10, 20% of the time, you can find something where you're like, oh, there's a little piece that could be right? A lot of times it's like, that's total bullshit. They don't like a style. Well, that's the style.
That's
sorry.
On them.
Right? But, you can use that to improve, and you also just have to like kind of bookmark it as something that's separate. I lost my train of thought there for a sec, but
no, I want to kind of buttress your point. So my troll strategy is I have kind of 3 lanes similar to yours. One, is it true? Right. So I did a few in-person podcasts, and my just visceral reaction was to say yeah, and I got like eviscerated in the comments of doing it. They're right. I'm actually like, you know what? Yeah. I thought about it. You're the 17th person who said it. You could have read the comments earlier. I don't think you needed to add it to it, but I'm going to learn and do better. So one is the truth, right? The second is misguided, true or false, meaning they say something just untrue, but they're not trolling. They're just like, well, Tom, you interviewed 90% informants and you're carrying the water for rat informants, and you're probably a Fed, right? And and then I have Jim on, and now they're like confirming that now, and I'm like, you know what? Like, listen, truth is, I had informants on, I own it, but if my total body work, it's only 5% on my show. Even recent kind of new emergence is only 20%, but my last 30 interviews have been like 0 informants, and I understand how you feel, and I'm looking to find a better content strategy, which may or may not include informants, but I'm just not the informant guy as much as you think, right? Then the third is just straight trolls looking to get a reaction,
right?
And I give like a 3-strike rule there. I write thanks or just some smart, snarky remark, and then they write back more, and then one more, and like by the third, I don't delete comments. I think you're alone.
You can't do that. The only comment I ever deleted was someone commented with swastikas. I deleted
that.
But that was
so. I'm scarily a free speech guy to the point of I actually go into my hidden comments and probably let 90% of them go back.
I don't even let hidden comments happen. We do allow all comments and whatever. YouTube still hides some stuff, and I will tell
hidden
people
comments
back.
is a scary place. When I go to hit that, I'm
Yeah.
like that's where like the head on the penis comes. Like I'm just like, I don't want that. So all right. So listen, Julian, you've been generous with your time. You know, if you're watching this long, you probably either love you or hate you, or maybe a little bit of both. But let people know how to find you.
Julian Dorey podcast. You just type in Julian Dorey, JulianDorey into YouTube. I have the main channel where we put our episodes. Second channel, Julian Dorey Clips, where we put clips from the podcast. And then I am on Instagram at my personal is Julian D. Dorey. That's my middle initial. And then our podcast Instagram channel where we're posting content every day is at Julian Dorey Podcast. Same thing on TikTok at Julian Dorey Podcast. My personal is at Real Julian Dorey, and we are on Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much for having me, brother.
My pleasure. Quick questions though, real quick. Are you doing video for Spotify or
Yes.
just okay? Beautiful. Okay. Does that cannibalize your YouTube?
Not at all.
Okay.
Biggest myth in the world.
Second question: clip channels was a thing for a while. Did shorts diminish the need for a clip channel? Is that a backup
No.
case you get slammed? So you still need a clip channel.
I took shorts. We went back to trying it for a month as well on my main channel a couple months ago, just because YouTube changed a couple things. Didn't work. My shorts are exclusively on the Clips channel. They don't even appear on my main channel.
And when I say
anymore.
short, is it the 4-minute Vlad shorts or the 60-second shorts?
It's both. So
dope.
we do content. Usually it's mostly like 6 to 15-minute clips, and then we do the shorts as well.
I find myself watching that a lot, and I don't even think I'm on. I think I'm on your main channel sometimes.
Yeah,
Like, I'll watch.
I mean, that's good then, because
Yeah.
that means maybe some of it's coming in your feed, because they don't mix those feeds the best.
Correct. And then in terms of, again, the business aspect, does that clip channel make up for 10% of revenue, 20%? Is it
I don't
small
even
amount
know.
but the growing?
I should know
I'm
that
just-
with,
yeah.
with the clips. The clips I've just been looking at. I got to pay more attention to that. I've been looking at the growth there.
Got it. Well, this was a fun one. We'll definitely have Julian back, and thanks for being on the
Thank
show,
you so
man.
much, brother. Appreciate you.
My pleasure.